That is the sound of wind, tornadoes, and hail. And they're all possible today, Tuesday, October 4th, 2016, across much of the Central Plains. And so I'm going to talk about the chances for tornadoes, how many tornadoes could be possible, when they could happen, and the intensity of the tornado potential today across the Central Plains. Okay, so I'm going to show you a couple cool sites you can use. We're going to show a couple of key features. This isn't, hypey news, simplified forecast. This is straight up meteorology 101. We're going to go over some cool forecasting techniques, but we're going to keep it simple and understandable. So that's what we're going to talk about in this episode of State of the Weather Address. Let's get right into it. Welcome to the show. So what I like to do first when I'm examining these severe weather setups is I like to look at the 500 millibar or 300 millibar charts, essentially the jet stream. And obviously we need a strong jet to support wind shear for severe thunderstorms, especially supercells and tornadoes. And so we're just going to look at the jet stream. Obviously our setup is in the central United States, and we've got a nice, pretty long wave trough here across the western and central U.S. And what we're going to look for is areas of divergence in this area. And we have a little bit of divergence kind of in this area right here. When you get that to spread out kind of in this area, when the jet spreads out above, it creates lift below because air has to fill out that area that's being torn apart up in the upper atmosphere, and so that creates a lift for thunderstorms. But we have got plenty of wind shear to work with, 60, 50 mile an hour mid-level jet, mid-upper level jet here in the 500 millibar range. That's going to support some tornadoes and severe thunderstorms across Nebraska, Kansas, and perhaps all the way down to Oklahoma. Now next, what I'll do is look at the surface. Okay, the surface, this is the surface winds, moisture, and the surface pressures. And what we like to do is draw out some of the key features across the United States. So clearly we got some anticyclonic flow going on right in this area. This is where our low pressure system is, right here. And so let's draw out our fronts. This is for October 4th, Tuesday today at 21Z, which is about, I think that's 4 p.m. now, Central Daylight Time for the central U.S. And so this is around 4 p.m. Usually thunderstorms are going to develop between 4 and 5 p.m. most afternoons. But I'll get into that in a second. We got a cold front kind of coming down in this area right here. You got drier air behind it. You got northwesterly winds behind it, southeasterly winds ahead of it, and very moist air. So you can see there's a kind of a cold front right there. You got another little mini low pressure. Whoops, maybe use red here. You got a little mini nub right there, a little mini low pressure in Oklahoma, and that could actually enhance tornado potential down in southern central Kansas into Oklahoma if you can get some more backed flow along it, because you can get some cyclonic flow, and when winds back out of the southeast, you can get a pretty good tornado threat. Moisture is pretty deep down there. You got a little bit of a surface trough here. This is normally where you'd get the dry line to occur, but it's monsoon season, or it's kind of the end of monsoon season, so there's actually a little bit of moisture behind it. The dry line's not as effective around this time of year. It's usually more effective in the spring. That being said, where's our warm front? Well, our warm front is going to be all the way up here. You see where these winds start to back to the east, northeast. That's where our warm front's going to be. So I don't think that's going to be a player today. I think there's going to be a lot of ongoing storms in this area, and moisture is probably not going to be as good up there. It's going to be cooler up there. Probably not going to be very supportive of storms. So I think our main player today is going to be along this cold front, and especially the surface trough, kind of cold front area in central eastern Oklahoma, central eastern Kansas, and maybe as far north as eastern Nebraska and western Iowa. And so remember, with tornadic thunderstorms or severe thunderstorms, you need 4 ingredients. You need lift, like a front. You need moisture. You need instability, and we need wind shear. We already went over the wind shear because the trough was kind of in this area, and you're all your strong upper level flow is right in that area, right where I think the action will occur. So we got our wind shear. We definitely got a good little belt of moisture right in this area. At least for this time of year, that's pretty decent. So that's gonna be very good. We got moisture. We got our lift. The surface convergence. You know, when the winds converge together, you want them to kind of come together like that to support lift. Today it's not like great, but it's not bad either. You definitely have some convergence kind of in that area. So there'll be storms that pop along ahead of this thing, out ahead of that. So do we have any instability? Let's check. And by the way, this is from pivotalweather.com. Or excuse me, twisterdata.com. Twisterdata.com, they have some pretty simple, nice graphics. We'll check out Pivotal Weather next. But you can see a nice little plume of instability right out ahead of that front we were talking about. And typically with severe thunderstorms, tornadic supercells, you want at least 750 CAPE. That's what we're looking at, convective available potential energy. I like to look at the average CAPE, the mean CAPE. There's three different kinds: max CAPE, mean CAPE, and surface-based CAPE. This is going to be our mean CAPE. And so you get that 750 anywhere in that green area. So I think anywhere in that green area is really supportive of severe thunderstorms. Now, if you have a lot of wind shear, you can get by with a lot of severe weather with lower amounts of CAPE. Sometimes wind shear can offset that. But we got plenty of instability in Oklahoma and Kansas. Nebraska is going to be the wild card because there's going to be storms ongoing in this area earlier in the day, and that's going to kill the instability. There's going to be a lot of clouds and rain. It's going to be cooler. It's going to kill the instability up there. But if there's enough recovery time, we've got plenty of wind shear, which you're about to see in a second here. Plenty of wind shear up in Kansas and Nebraska especially to support severe thunderstorms, even if there's not enough CAPE, maybe even some tornadoes. So we'll get into that in a second. Alrighty, so this is pivotalweather.com. This is what we're looking at right now. This is a great website. They have beautiful graphics. You can zoom in, great detail. And what we're looking at right now is the 4Cam NAM. This is the high resolution NAM. So it's got a little bit better resolution here, so we can kind of zoom in and look at some cool stuff here. This is zoomed into the Central Plains, where I think the main show is going to be in. So let's draw out our surface map. This is showing dew point, so our moisture, surface winds, and the pressure. Okay, so we got our cold front right here. You can see out behind it, it's a lot drier. You got northwesterly winds. Out ahead of it, southerly winds, more moist. Then you got like a little bit of a nub here. There could be a little bit of a low pressure system right there, kind of a mini low. And then south of that, you got that surface trough kind of right in this area. You got southwesterly winds, drier air. It doesn't cool down behind it as much. But out ahead of it, man, you got some very juicy, rich moisture in Oklahoma for this time of year. And that's going to really enhance the tornado potential down there if storms can develop that far south. Current indication is this storm's going to kind of fire along this area up here. But it could get pretty good and nasty down there. So for looking at tornado potential, since that's what this forecast video is about, we really want to examine those four key ingredients like I talked about. So we got our lift all out ahead of this area. We got our moisture, which is mostly kind of in this area, the darker shades. And then we got our wind shear, so we'll check that out real fast. Here's the 500 millibar. This is the jet stream. You got a very nice jet stream. Usually that's what happens in fall. So this is going to be your area of really good wind shear in the pinks. Anything above about 40 knots, I've come to find out, kind of in the 40-45 knot range is very good, especially for supercells and tornadoes. And you notice how the winds were out of the south, southeast at surface. They're now out of the south, southwest. So you're going to get some directional shear. The winds will turn with height. So we got some pretty good directional shear this day too. Not fantastic, but it's definitely doable because we have really good speed shear. And if you look at the 700 millibar heights here, this is at 4 p.m. by the way, 21Z. we've got some very strong belt of 700s up here. This is mid-level, the mid-level jet. And that will support some good mid-level shear in southeast Nebraska into Kansas. Okay, so the wind shear is really good up here. And then we'll check out the low-level jet. This is at 850 millibars. And this thing is cranking too. Watch what happens between, this is 4 p.m. at 21Z. We'll go 3 hours later, 0Z. It just goes nuts. And you're talking some pretty ridiculous winds out in eastern Kansas, western Iowa, out to southeastern Nebraska. You're dealing with 50, maybe even 60 knot low-level jet, which is absolutely ridiculous. That's really going to be enhancing the tornado potential significantly. But there's a problem. There is a problem here. So you see down here, the low-level jet's a lot weaker. Up here, it's a lot stronger, but let's check our instability really fast. We'll go under severe weather. Okay. The instability is very weak up here. Now, why is that? Well, there's going to be ongoing storms in this area earlier in the day. That's going to kill the instability. So that area where that best wind shear is, the instability is the weakest. In the area where the wind shear is a little bit weaker, the instability is the best. So it's a little bit displaced today, but I think it's going to meet somewhere in between. I think this is kind of where your best tornado potential is going to occur today across the area. So let's look at the composite reflectivity, and I'll show you how this advances throughout the day. We'll go back out to 4 p.m. 4 p.m., let's go a few hours earlier. This is the storms I'm talking about in Nebraska, northern Kansas. These storms are going to really mess with the instability. They're going to kind of kill the instability for this area. If those storms do not occur, if they probably will occur, and there's a lot of warm air advection, but if they're not as strong enough, you can get some breaks in the clouds. This area is going to be something to watch up here with all that wind shear. But down here, it's a lot clearer. So that's why you got that higher instability down there. Now we'll advance to 4 p.m. Still a lot of storms in this area. We got new storms firing in central Kansas. And 7 p.m. we got a very nice line of storms from about Omaha down to extreme northern Texas. Storm's going to be very isolated down here, I believe, but up here is where the main show is going to be. Tornadic-wise, let's check out some soundings here. What we're going to want to look for, we'll go back a couple hours here, 4 p.m. What we're going to want to look for tornadoes is good directional shear, good moisture, and instability, kind of an overlap of all that, and wind shear. So let's go up here. We'll go up in Nebraska where that instability was weak, and we can check the tornado potential up there. This is a skew T sounding, which I don't think is all the way in the frame here. Hold on. Yeah, that's good enough. This is a skew T sounding that you can click right on the map and it'll show you. This is the possible hazard type right here. This makes it really simple. I mean, don't always trust that thing, but if you want to, if you're like really in a rush or something, you can check these out. Possible hazard type tornado. This is what we're looking for right here. Is we want winds out of the southeast that turn to the southwest like that and strengthen. So we got southeast winds at like 10 knots here to strengthening to the around 500 millibars. We got 60 knots or so out of the southwest. 850s or 40 knots, but those rapidly increase a few hours later. And I can show you that real fast. We'll go to 0Z. Watch what happens here. Okay, well, I guess the front has passed that area at 0Z. Hold on. About to 30 hours. And that low-level jet, it's hard to see, but there's a 60-knot barb right there. So what's going to happen, I believe, is once that low-level jet kicks in, that's going to enhance the tornado potential. I think your greatest tornado risk is going to occur around 7 p.m. when that thing kicks in. The surface to 850, 700 millibar shear, kind of this area right here, is really the most important for tornadoes. So that's going to be the area to watch. We'll go ahead and click on some other areas. Well, I'll click on Nebraska one more time. I decided to zoom out a little bit so we can see everything. So we got some good wind shear up here, but here's our instability parcel right here going up. You want this to be really fat and wide, kind of like that, and it really isn't. So there's not a ton of instability in Nebraska for tornadoes, but there is plenty of wind shear, so that's going to be kind of a wild card. Can we get storms to clear out? So let's go a little bit farther south. And areas I like to look at for tornadoes is little clockwise areas. Do you see that right there? Clockwise flow. That means there could be a little low pressure system. Here's another area right here. We want to look for those areas when finding tornadoes. So let's click just ahead of that thing in kind of a good moist area, southeast wind location. Possible hazard type, tornado. But notice the difference here. Now the wind shear isn't as strong, but that'll still support tornadoes. Okay, this is still pretty good. You got southerly winds at the surface, southwesterly winds up here. Goes from about 15 knots at surface to about 50 knots, 60 knots at 500 millibar. But notice the difference here. Our instability is much greater down in Kansas, much fatter. And so that's going to support tornadoes. It's uncapped down here as well. And so we could get some tornadoes in Kansas, that looks like. And it really improves towards 7 p.m. when that low-level jet kicks in. So let's go down into Oklahoma here. Remember, the wind shear was a little bit weaker down here, and that is the case. It's only about 45, 50 knots towards 500 millibar, and it's southerly, kind of it's more southerly, maybe even southwesterly at surface. It is capped here, though, so Oklahoma, I think, is going to be more capped, and so I don't think there's going to be as much storms down there. But the instability here is even better. So it's going to be kind of a wild card down there as well. Can we get storms to fire? We'll advance 1 hour and look at the moisture down there. If we can get some storms of fire, you definitely could get a tornado potential down there. Very deep moisture. We'll click on a sounding again. And you can see this, the moisture on the sounding. See how it's stuck together like that? When it's close together like that, you got better moisture. Good instability, a little bit better wind shear on that sounding. So, and if I remember right, there's a PDS tornado sounding, which means a particular dangerous situation tornado. So when you see that, that's a pretty good sign you're going to get some tornadoes. One other thing I like to look at is the Energy Helicity Index. This kind of measures the instability and wind shear in the atmosphere, and that kind of supports tornadoes. And it's very enhanced in this area, but it's not a tell-all in my opinion. Up here you could get tornadoes as well. I think something that's a little bit more important is just the wind, looking at the wind shear itself. The EHI is not always accurate in my opinion. We can check out the supercell composite, pretty strong in Oklahoma, and up to Nebraska it's kind of decent. Significant tornado perimeter. Again, these things aren't the Bible, you know, they're not like something I always look at, but you can just throw that in there to look at them. So look at the helicity, and there's the crazy helicity up in Nebraska. It's kind of measuring wind shear. This is at 0Z, 7 p.m., and it's really showing that low-level jet, the effect of the low-level jet in that area. And so if you can get some instability in this area, look out, there could be some tornadoes. So if I were to place Tuesday's tornado potential on a map here, I think we're looking at Kansas up to about Omaha, southwest Iowa, maybe eastern Kansas, down to about Oklahoma, Texas border down there. But it's going to be capped down there, so it's going to be a little bit iffy. So I think the most likely area for tornadoes is going to be kind of somewhere in between the best wind shear and instability. Probably going to be in this area. Eastern central Kansas out to maybe Wichita, and north central Oklahoma to maybe as far south as southeast Nebraska if enough instability can get up there. So I think that's our greatest threat for today. All right, drum roll please. It's time to rate this tornado setup. What do I think on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being marginal and 10 being an absolute apocalypse, how this tornado setup is going to favor? I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. So, kind of an in-between setup. It's a respectable setup. It's nothing to sleep on, but I don't think it's going to be a full-scale tornado outbreak. I don't think it's going to be anything like that. I think we'd like to see stronger instability and less storms in this area especially, and maybe a little bit of a weaker cap in like southern Oklahoma and stronger shear down there. I don't think you're going to get a tornado outbreak today, but I do think you'll get a handful of tornado reports. I don't think it's going to be like nothing. I think we'll get maybe 5 to 10 tornado reports across Nebraska, Kansas, and Oklahoma altogether here. So if those storms can clear out, you can get more instability farther north, you might see a little bit more. Otherwise, I think you're going to stay between 5 and 10. In terms of tornado intensity, I think most tornadoes will remain below strong or EF2 criteria. You might get a strong tornado or two in Kansas, in Oklahoma, maybe southeast Nebraska. But overall, I think the strong tornado threat is going to be kind of low. Again, I'm not ruling it out. There's some pretty darn strong wind shear with this setup, and if things can time out right, you can get just enough instability when that low-level jet kicks in. Who knows? So it'll be interesting to watch. So hope you enjoyed today's weather video. If you want more of these weather forecasts and you want more weather forecasting tutorials and you want to further your weather forecasting skills, go ahead and subscribe, and I'll be launching more of these videos on this YouTube channel. And also, if you're a hardcore weather enthusiast, go ahead and subscribe to our email newsletter below that. I'll be releasing some exclusive content in our email newsletter and some more tutorials there as well. So go ahead and subscribe, then follow me on Facebook, then sign up. And hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you soon.